The digital invitation flickered on my screen, its cheerful design somehow making the words more painful. Come celebrate Christmas with the Martin family. My own surname listed as if I were some distant acquaintance rather than my mother's firstborn daughter. What caught my eye wasn't the festive border or the holiday greetings. It was the family photo underneath. My mother, her husband Gregory, and their 2 children posed in matching sweaters. The complete family caption burned into my retinas as my throat constricted. I zoomed in on my mother's face, the woman who had sent me exactly 3 text messages in the past year. Happy birthday, Happy New Year, and one brief announcement about my half-sister's birth. Now she wanted me at her picture-perfect Christmas dinner? My fingertips hovered over the keyboard as unexpected anger surged through me, replacing the familiar hollow ache of being forgotten. My name is Rachel. I'm 21 and a university engineering student. This is the story of how I became visible again to a mother who had chosen to forget me. I'd been supporting myself entirely since starting university. My scholarship covered tuition, but everything else came from my campus job and careful budgeting. Meanwhile, my mother had reinvented herself with Gregory, a man who'd made it clear from the beginning that there wasn't room for me in their new life. When my half-brother was born 4 years ago, what little attention I'd received evaporated completely. The invite stared back at me, demanding a response. I took a deep breath and clicked decline. The small act of self-protection felt both terrifying and liberating. I closed my laptop and tried to focus on my upcoming finals, telling myself it was just another ordinary decision on an ordinary day. But ordinary days don't typically include your phone vibrating with a call from someone who hasn't bothered to dial your number in years. Rachel? My mother's voice sounded broken, tearful. How could you decline our Christmas invitation? We all want to see you. The "we" struck me as particularly absurd. I hadn't heard her sound this upset since... Actually, I couldn't remember the last time she'd shown this much emotion about anything concerning me. I have plans, I lied, staring at the wall calendar above my desk, empty except for exam dates. Please reconsider, she continued, her voice cracking. Everyone will be there. Grandma Louise, Uncle Patrick, all the cousins. It wouldn't be the same without you. The irony was almost too much. 3 years of family gatherings had happened without me, each one documented in Facebook photos my grandmother had reluctantly shown me during our monthly coffee meetups. Complete family captions under images where I didn't exist. Before I could respond, there was a shuffling sound and Gregory's voice came through the speaker. Listen here, he said, his tone sharp and accusatory. Your mother is crying because of you. Do you know how selfish you're being? After everything she's done for you? Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. What exactly has she done for me, Gregory? Send 3 texts a year? Forget I exist until she needs a prop for her perfect family Christmas card. The words rushed out before I could stop them. I haven't been part of this family since you came into the picture, so don't pretend you suddenly want me there. You're being a complete jerk, he spat. Your mother deserves better than this. You're right, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. She deserved a husband who didn't convince her to abandon her firstborn daughter. I ended the call, my hands shaking. Immediately, guilt crashed over me. Despite everything, making my mother cry felt awful. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. My phone lit up with a text from my grandmother. Your mother just called me in tears. What happened? I hesitated, then called her instead of texting back. If anyone deserved the full story, it was Grandma Louise, the only person who had consistently shown up for me. I declined Mom's Christmas invitation, I explained after we'd exchanged greetings. Then she called crying, and Gregory took the phone and called me a jerk. There was a long pause. I'm not surprised, she finally said, her voice heavy with disappointment that I knew wasn't directed at me. Rachel, your mother has been posting those complete family photos for years, and I've told her repeatedly how hurtful it is. She always says she'll reach out to you properly, but then Gregory convinces her that you're fine, that college students don't need their parents hovering. I swallowed hard. I just don't understand why she'd suddenly want me there now. Because I threatened not to come this year if you weren't invited, she admitted. But I wanted her to actually talk to you, not send some impersonal email invitation. The realization that I'd only been invited because of my grandmother's ultimatum stung worse than being forgotten. I was just a box to check, a problem to solve before the holidays. Should I have accepted? I asked, suddenly uncertain. That depends, she replied. Do you want to sit through a dinner where Gregory glares at you while your mother pretends everything is normal? Or would you rather spend Christmas with me? I was planning to leave early anyway. Her offer was tempting, but I couldn't shake the image of my mother crying. I feel terrible for making her upset. You didn't make her upset, Rachel. Her own actions and their consequences made her upset. There's a difference. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Please meet me to talk. I can bring Gregory or your grandmother if that would help. The thought of Gregory being present made my stomach clench. No, Gregory, I texted back, but I'll meet if Grandma comes. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between my dorm and their house. When I arrived, my mother and grandmother were already seated at a corner table. My mother looked smaller somehow, her confident facade cracked. I slid into the chair across from her, nodding a greeting to Grandma Louise. I'm sorry I declined your invitation, I started, determined to be the bigger person despite the knot in my stomach. But I don't understand why you'd want me there when we've barely spoken in years. My mother glanced at my grandmother before answering. I thought you wouldn't want me calling or texting all the time. Gregory said college students need their space, that parents who hover are just interfering. The absurdity of her explanation made me laugh without humor. 2 texts a year is hovering? And you sent an evite instead of actually calling me about Christmas because Gregory thought it would make you feel respected like the other relatives, she said, her voice small. Something inside me shattered. Mom, do you hear yourself? You've been letting Gregory dictate your relationship with your daughter for years. I'm not a relative. I'm your child. My grandmother reached across the table and squeezed my hand as I continued, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. Do you know what it's like to see Facebook photos of what you call your complete family when I'm not in them? To get a text announcing a new half-sister like I'm some distant acquaintance? To be invisible in my own family? Tears were streaming down my mother's face, but for once I didn't feel guilty for causing them. They were tears she needed to cry. When you left for college, seeing how Gregory was with our son made me realize how much I'd neglected you, she admitted. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I let this happen. I want to fix things between us, but I don't know how. Maybe start by not letting Gregory make decisions about our relationship, I suggested, my voice sharper than intended. And understand that I can't just pretend the last few years didn't happen. I don't even know my half-siblings, and honestly, I'm afraid I'd resent them if I met them. They don't deserve that. My mother nodded, wiping her tears. Would you consider coming for Christmas if Gregory apologizes? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. She was afraid of losing me completely. It was a small victory, but not one that brought me joy. I'm not coming to Christmas dinner, I said firmly. But I might be willing to meet you again, just us, if Gregory apologizes for how he spoke to me on the phone. She nodded, clearly disappointed but not surprised. I understand. Can I text you? Call sometimes? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. But not because you feel guilty, only if you actually want to know about my life. When we parted, she hugged me awkwardly, and I let her. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Over the next week, my mother texted daily with simple questions about my classes and my plans for break. Gregory never apologized, and I didn't go to their Christmas dinner. Instead, my grandmother came to see me on Christmas Eve, bringing homemade cookies and stories about her youth that made me laugh until my sides hurt. On Christmas Day, my mother texted asking if we could meet for coffee. When I arrived at the cafe, she was alone, holding a small wrapped package. "Merry Christmas," she said, sliding it across the table. Inside was a framed baby photo of me that she'd had professionally restored. I ran my finger over the image of my infant self, cradled in the arms of a much younger, happier version of my mother. "Thank you," I said, genuine appreciation in my voice. I paid for her coffee as my gift to her. We talked about neutral topics, my engineering program, professors I liked, even a few dates I'd been on. Nothing deep, nothing painful. Just two people getting to know each other again, or perhaps for the first time. When she hugged me goodbye, she didn't cry, and I didn't feel that crushing weight of guilt. The chasm between us was still there, but for the first time, I could see the possibility of a bridge. I don't know if we'll ever be truly close. Some wounds leave permanent scars. But as I walked back to my dorm with the framed photo tucked safely in my bag, I realized something important. Being visible doesn't always mean being center stage in someone else's life. Sometimes it just means being seen for who you really are, even if only for moments at a time. If you're sitting there right now feeling invisible in your own family, know this. Your worth isn't determined by how others see you. You have the right to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to walk away from relationships that diminish you, even when those relationships are with the people who should love you most. And sometimes, walking away is what finally makes them see you. The calendar notification made my phone vibrate, but it was the text that appeared beneath it that turned my blood to ice. "Family emergency meeting tomorrow. Your sister's wedding takes priority. We can't make yours." My fingers froze over the seating chart I'd been perfecting for weeks. 3 empty spaces stared back at me. Mom, Dad, and my sister Valerie. The metallic taste of adrenaline filled my mouth as I watched the cursor blink where their names should have been. 17 years of being second choice, compressed into 19 words on a screen. My name is Natalie, I'm 32 and a logistics specialist. This is the story of how I built my own table when I realized I'd never have a seat at theirs. The phone buzzed again. A second message. "We know you'll understand." "You always do." That phrase, "you always do," had followed me since childhood. When Valerie needed my bedroom for her dance practice, when she wore my new clothes before I could, when my college graduation conflicted with her recital. Understanding had become my assigned role in our family theater, a quieter performance that never earned applause. I set the phone screen down on my planning binder, the one filled with carefully annotated spreadsheets, vendor contracts, and budget calculations. The kind of meticulous work that had built my reputation as one of the most sought-after logistics consultants on the West Coast. Ironic that I could orchestrate complex operations for Fortune 500 companies, but couldn't secure my own family's attendance at my wedding. The apartment felt suddenly too quiet, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Through the window, San Francisco's fog was rolling in, erasing the Golden Gate Bridge 1 inch at a time. I watched it disappear, wondering when I'd become so erasable to my own family. My fiancé James found me there an hour later, still staring at nothing. His keys jangled as he set them down, concern immediately crossing his face. "What happened?" he asked, crossing the room in 3 strides. I handed him my phone without a word. His jaw tightened as he read. "They're not coming," he said. Not a question. "Valerie changed her date to the same weekend," I replied, voice steadier than I felt. "Apparently it was the only possible day for her venue." "That's..." James searched for words, anger and disbelief competing on his face. "That's not coincidence, Nat. You sent those save the dates 8 months ago." I nodded, the reality settling more firmly with each passing minute. "Mom says they can't choose sides." "But they just did," he said softly, sitting beside me. That night, sleep refused to come. I scrolled through photos on my phone. Family Christmas cards where Valerie stood centered between our parents, my shoulder half cropped from the frame. School plays where Dad recorded Valerie's 3-minute role, but missed my lead performance. The pattern was so obvious now that I wondered how I'd normalized it for decades. My phone pinged at 6:17 a.m. Valerie. "OMG sis, can you believe the venue we wanted suddenly had our date open? Total destiny. Mom told me about the conflict. That really sucks, but you're always so reasonable. Maybe you can reschedule. Love you." The casual cruelty of it struck me like a physical blow. 3 exclamation points and a "love you," as if that softened the request that I move my entire wedding. as if 8 months of planning could simply be erased for her convenience. Before I could respond, another text arrived, this one from my mother. Natalie, please call when you get a chance. We need to discuss logistics for the weddings. Logistics, my profession, my expertise, now being wielded against me by someone who'd never bothered to understand what I actually did for a living. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a listing I'd bookmarked months ago while researching destination options. A restored 16th century villa in Tuscany, surrounded by olive groves and vineyards. The estate agent had called it spectacular, but usually booked 2 years in advance. On a whim, I clicked, check availability for my wedding weekend. Available. My pulse quickened as I stared at the screen. The golden stone walls glowed in the morning light of the photos. A long wooden table sat beneath a canopy of grapevines. Lanterns hung from ancient olive trees. It looked like something from a dream, the kind of place where memories aren't just made but etched permanently into your bones. The cursor hovered over the Request Booking button. In that moment, 20-plus years of being the understanding one, the reasonable one, the one who always accommodated without complaint, crystallized into a single, clear thought. No more. I clicked. 2 hours later, my phone lit up with a call from my father. I answered on the 4th ring. Natalie, he began, his businessman voice in full effect, your mother tells me you haven't responded to her message. We need to discuss the situation. What situation would that be, Dad? I asked, my voice deliberately light. He cleared his throat. Don't be difficult. You know Valerie's wedding venue situation. We're trying to make this work for everyone. Everyone except me, I said. That's not fair. You've always been the mature one, the independent one. Valerie needs more support. She's 30 years old, Dad. The silence stretched between us, taut and unfamiliar. My father wasn't used to interruptions, especially from me. I've made other arrangements, I said finally. You don't need to worry about attending my wedding anymore. What does that mean? Confusion replaced authority in his voice. It means I'm solving the logistics problem, I replied, using his corporate vocabulary. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I called my grandmother, Helen. Unlike my parents, she answered on the first ring. Natalie, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you. Her voice, warm and genuine, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Grandma, I need to tell you something. I explained everything. The text, Valerie's destiny, my parents' decision. With each word, a weight lifted. When I finished, the line was quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Grandma? I'm here, she said, her voice different now, harder, clearer. I've watched this happen your whole life, and I've stayed quiet too long. Where is your wedding going to be, sweetheart? Tuscany, I said, under olive trees. I heard her soft laugh. Perfect. Olives mean peace and victory, you know. The Romans used to crown their champions with olive wreaths. Will you come, Grandma? It's far, and wild horses couldn't keep me away. And I'm bringing your cousins Rachel and Daniel, and your Uncle Thomas. He's been saying for years how your parents treat you isn't right. My throat tightened. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, she said firmly. It's time someone showed up for you, Natalie. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my apartment, something unfamiliar spreading through my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it as relief, the sudden release of a burden I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten its weight. The next morning, I sent new invitations, simple cream cards with pressed olive leaves and the coordinates of the villa. By evening, my phone was lighting up with responses. Rachel, we just bought our tickets. Mom's furious with Aunt Judy. We're all coming. Daniel, about damn time someone called this out. Bringing Jenny and the kids. Need help with anything? Uncle Thomas, proud of you, kiddo. Your grandfather would be too. The messages continued for days. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My father's brother and his family. Friends from college who'd witnessed the dynamic firsthand. The guest list grew, not with obligation invites, but with people who were choosing to be there. I didn't tell my parents where the wedding would be. When my mother called again, her voice tight with control, I let her assumptions stand. Natalie, this silence is childish. If you've canceled your wedding because of this, you're only hurting yourself. I haven't canceled anything, Mom, I replied calmly. My wedding is proceeding exactly as it should. Then we expect an invitation to wherever you've moved it, she said, a hint of triumph in her voice. I don't think that will be possible, I said. As you pointed out, you can't be in two places at once. I ended the call before she could respond. Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into planning the destination wedding. The villa wasn't cheap, but between my savings from my successful consulting business and James's software engineering salary, we could comfortably afford it, especially since we were inviting far fewer guests than my parents had insisted on for the original venue. The flight to Italy was 11 hours of anticipation. James held my hand across the armrest as the plane began its descent, the Tuscan landscape unfolding beneath us. Golden hills dotted with cypress trees, vineyards laid out in geometric precision, ancient stone buildings glowing amber in the afternoon light. "Are you ready?" he asked. I nodded, surprising myself with how true it felt. The villa exceeded even the photographs, stone walls weathered by 5 centuries of sun and rain, wooden beams darkened with age, windows that opened onto views that painters had tried to capture for generations. The courtyard contained a long wooden table that could seat 40, with a canopy of grapevines overhead and strings of lanterns waiting to be lit. Signor Rossi, the caretaker, handed me the iron keys with a formal bow. "La villa has been waiting," he said in careful English, "for the right celebration." For the next 3 days, local artisans and workers transformed the space. Florists arranged wildflowers in terracotta pots. Carpenters restored the ancient table to a polished gleam. The village baker practiced our cake, bringing samples each morning. The local seamstress made last-minute adjustments to my dress, simple silk that caught the Tuscan light. The evening before the wedding, my phone exploded with notifications. Valerie had posted photos of her rehearsal dinner, tagging our parents, aunts, uncles, the entire extended family, except those who were already in Tuscany with me. Grandma Helen, elegant in navy linen despite the travel, placed her hand over mine as I stared at the screen. "Let it go," she said softly. "Tomorrow isn't about what you're missing. It's about who showed up." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm. From my window, I could see guests arriving. Rachel directing her children in their flower-scattering duties. Daniel helping arrange chairs. Uncle Thomas adjusting his tie while my cousin Sam tuned his guitar for the ceremony. My dress wasn't the elaborate cathedral-train gown my mother had pushed for. It was simpler. Italian silk that moved like water, catching light rather than demanding it. The local florist, Maria, wove olive branches into my hair instead of a veil. "For peace," she said, her English halting but her smile clear. "And for strength." When I stepped out into the courtyard, 40 faces turned toward me. Not the 150 my parents had insisted I invite, with their business associates and social connections. Just 40 people who had chosen to cross an ocean because they believed in what James and I were building. As Sam's guitar began the processional, Grandma Helen rose from her front row seat. In her hands was a crown she'd fashioned from olive branches gathered from the grove that morning. "For the champion," she whispered, reaching up to place it on my head as I passed. The ceremony itself was simple. No elaborate rituals, no performance for social media, just honest words and promises made in golden light as the Tuscan sun began to lower itself toward the horizon. When the officiant pronounced us married, the applause that rose from our chosen family felt more genuine than any orchestrated reception line. Dinner was served at the long table, local wine, pasta made by hand that morning, bread still warm from village ovens. Lanterns glowed overhead as dusk fell. Laughter echoed against stone walls that had stood for half a millennium. It was during the toasts that I noticed Rachel's phone continually lighting up with notifications. "What's happening?" I asked her quietly. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Daniel's been posting photos since this morning. We all agreed before the trip to share everything on social media. We wanted everyone back home to see what they were missing by choosing Valerie's wedding. Apparently, they're causing quite a stir back home. As the night deepened, the full story emerged through texts and calls. The photographs of our Tuscan wedding, the villa, the olive grove, the intimate gathering of people genuinely happy to be there. They had spread through family channels like wildfire. At Valerie's carefully orchestrated ballroom event, the absence of half the family had become impossible to ignore. Several guests had asked why so many family members were missing, having seen their Italian photos online. Grandma Helen's empty seat in the front row had been particularly conspicuous. When someone finally showed my mother Daniel's Instagram, the perfect facade cracked. The stories varied, but all agreed. The reception had turned tense, conversation strained, explanations inadequate. I didn't learn all this until the next day when we gathered for a recovery brunch in the villa's sun-drenched kitchen. I didn't check my phone during my wedding night. Whatever crisis was unfolding in Boston could wait. When I finally did, there were 17 missed calls and a cascade of texts. Mom, people are asking where everyone is. This is humiliating. Dad, call immediately. Your behavior is unacceptable. Valerie, how could you do this to me? On my wedding day! The last one made me laugh out loud, a sound so unexpected and genuine that James looked up from his coffee in surprise. What? He asked. I showed him Valerie's message. 8 months, I said. We sent save the dates 8 months ago. He nodded, understanding completely. The villa was booked for a week. Most guests stayed for at least 3 days after the wedding, turning the event into an impromptu family reunion. Grandma Helen held court at the long table, telling stories I'd never heard about my grandfather, about my father as a young man, about family history that somehow had never included me before. On our last night, as fireflies appeared in the olive grove and the smell of jasmine filled the cooling air, I found myself sitting alone with Grandma at the table. You know they'll never understand what happened here, she said, swirling the last of her wine. I know. They'll make you the villain of this story. The selfish one who ruined your sister's perfect day. I nodded, surprised to find I didn't care. And what story will you tell, Grandma? She reached across the table and took my hand, her skin papery but her grip still strong. I'll tell the truth, that sometimes the quietest revenge is simply living well among those who see your worth. She was right, of course. When we returned to San Francisco, the narrative was already solidified in my parents' circle. I was the spiteful sister who had orchestrated an international event specifically to overshadow Valerie's special day. The details grew more distorted with each retelling. 3 weeks after our return, my mother finally called. I answered out of curiosity more than obligation. Your father and I have been thinking, she began, her voice carefully modulated. This rivalry between you and your sister has gone on long enough. We'd like to host a family dinner to clear the air. I closed my eyes, picturing the Tuscan villa, the long table under grapevines, the faces of people who had crossed an ocean to stand with me. I don't think that will be possible, I said, using her own words from weeks earlier. My schedule is quite full. Natalie, she said, her composure slipping, you can't keep punishing us. We're your family. No, I said quietly. My family was in Tuscany. You chose to be somewhere else. I ended the call before she could respond, a habit I was coming to appreciate. That evening, James and I hung our favorite wedding photo in our living room. Not a posed portrait, but a candid shot taken at dinner. The long table stretched beneath lanterns and stars, filled with laughing faces illuminated by golden light. At the head of the table, I was caught mid-smile, the olive crown still in my hair, looking not at the camera, but at the people who had chosen to be there. 6 months later, I've had no further contact with my parents or Valerie. They've called and texted occasionally, but I've maintained my distance. This separation is likely permanent. I've finally accepted that some relationships are too damaged to repair, and I'm at peace with that decision. The family I've chosen has proven far more nurturing than the one I was born into. It wasn't perfect revenge. It was something better. The quiet freedom of finally understanding that some tables aren't worth fighting for a seat at. Sometimes you have to build your own, beneath olive trees and stars, and fill it with people who show up without being begged. And if pictures of that table happen to make their way back to those who excluded you, well, that's just an unexpected blessing. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The chill from my phone radiated up my arm as my mother's words pierced the Sunday morning quiet. Your kids can skip this year. Mother's Day is only for the well-behaved ones. I watched my 8-year-old daughter's fingers tighten around her juice glass, her small shoulders curling inward like a wounded animal. Her eyes, wide with confusion, slowly filled as comprehension dawned. The kitchen light caught the single tear that tracked down her cheek before she whispered, "Grandma doesn't want me there?" My name is Rachel Watson. I'm 32 and a financial advisor. This is the story of how I dismantled a family dynasty built on emotional manipulation. 3 generations of Watson women sat in that kitchen. My daughter, Olivia, myself, and the ghost of my own childhood insecurities, awakened by my mother's casual cruelty. For years, I'd been the family fixer, the silent provider whose credit cards fueled their lifestyle while my opinions remained worthless. My mother, Victoria, hadn't worked in 15 years but maintained a social calendar that rivaled diplomats. It was funded entirely by the daughter she constantly found lacking. I'd become accustomed to her criticisms of me, but watching her weapon aimed at my daughter unlocked something primal, something final. My thumbs moved across the screen, typing a message so short it belied the seismic shift it represented. Understood. I'll cancel my card for the event. I set my phone down and knelt before Olivia, whose small face had crumpled into silent tears. "Hey, sunshine, we're going to have our own celebration today." "But why doesn't Grandma want me there?" Her voice cracked on the question. I brushed her hair back, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people confuse love with control. Grandma is upset with me, and she's trying to hurt me by hurting you. Did I do something wrong? No, baby, not one thing. I held her gaze. And you will never, ever have to earn love from people who are supposed to give it freely. My mother left my message on read, then immediately forwarded it to the family group chat like a trophy. The notifications began pinging. My sister Renee with an eye roll emoji, my cousin Thomas with, "Drama queen much?" My father's silent complicity through absence. Within 5 minutes, my sister's Instagram story appeared. Crystal champagne flutes clinking above plates of lobster pasta at Aurelio's, the upscale restaurant where my mother had been treating the family to Mother's Day brunches for years. The caption read, "Mother's Day with a real family." They thought public humiliation would make me fold. It didn't. It revealed the true currency of our relationship. While Olivia retreated to the living room with her tablet, I walked to my home office and opened my banking app. My fingers hovered over the screen as 15 years of conditioning waged war with the mama bear whose cub had just been wounded. Be the good daughter, keep the peace, just apologize. The mama bear won. I navigated to account settings and systematically removed every authorized user. Mother, sister, father, cousins, all deleted. I canceled every pre-approved restaurant tab. I froze the reimbursement line they treated as their personal slush fund. I removed every linked card from every family member's phone. For 15 years, I'd been their ATM dressed in human skin. In 3 minutes flat, I closed the bank. As I worked, the group chat selfies kept coming. Steaks, dessert platters, expensive wine. "Missing you, sis." LOL from Renee. All charged to the card they assumed would process automatically because it always had. They had no idea. 14 minutes later, the notifications started. Declined, declined, declined. But the first call I answered wasn't from my mother. It was from Aurelio's manager, his voice tightly professional but with an undercurrent of tension. "Miss Watson, I'm very sorry to bother you, but your family's card is declining repeatedly. They're telling us you're on your way here with another payment method. I stepped onto my balcony, the warm May air carrying the scent of my neighbor's barbecue. Children laughed somewhere down the block. "No, I'm not coming," I said evenly. "And they're no longer authorized users on any of my accounts." A pause. Restaurant sounds filtered through, clattering dishes, ambient conversation, a cork popping. "So, who is responsible for this bill then?" he asked carefully. "My mother," I answered. "The one who told my daughter she isn't well behaved enough to attend Mother's Day brunch." Silence. Then a quiet exhale of understanding. "I'll speak to them," he said, voice steady now. "Thank you for the clarification." When the call ended, my phone erupted. First my sister. "What did you do?" Then my mother. "Call me now, this isn't funny." Then my cousin. "We just ordered dessert." What is happening? What shocked me most wasn't their panic or the public embarrassment they faced. It was the realization that, for the first time ever, I didn't rush to save them. I didn't jump to fix it. I didn't apologize. And I didn't bend. I returned to the living room where Olivia sat curled on the couch, watching cartoons. She patted the spot beside her, and I settled in as she laid her head in my lap. She traced small circles on my arm with her fingertip. "Mommy, are they mad?" she whispered. "They're mad because they didn't expect consequences," I said softly. "Are we in trouble?" I kissed her forehead. "No, we're just witnessing what happens when people who never hear no finally do." The quiet of our living room stood in stark contrast to what I imagined at the restaurant. Raised voices, scraping chairs, failing cards, and for the first time in years, my family facing a bill they couldn't hide from. My mother finally called. Not a voice note, not a text. An actual call. Her voice was shaky, stripped of its usual imperial tone. "Rachel, sweetheart, your card must have some issue. Can you just fix it so we can finish dinner?" I leaned back against the cushions, keeping my voice calm, controlled. "There is no issue. I removed you all today." She didn't answer for a beat. Then the switch flipped. The same entitled voice I'd heard my entire life. "You're doing this on Mother's Day? In front of everyone. You're humiliating us." "No," I replied. "You did that when you told my 8-year-old daughter she wasn't worthy of your time." Silence. Then I heard chairs dragging, people whispering, someone asking the waiter to try again. My mother hissed into the phone. "You better fix this before the entire restaurant sees us being escorted out." "There's nothing to fix," I said. Her breathing sharpened. "You think you're powerful because you have money?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm powerful because I finally removed access." She tried one more tactic, fake crying, the manipulation she'd used since I was 10. But beneath the theatrical sobbing was something new, genuine fear, because she finally realized they were no longer inside the vault. They were outside with everyone else. I ended the call, not angry, just done. Olivia looked up from her coloring book. "Is Grandma still mad?" "She's learning," I whispered. My phone lit up again, the restaurant manager. "They're refusing to leave. We need your authorization for the next step." I closed my eyes and exhaled. After sitting with Olivia for another 10 minutes to make sure she was comfortable, I told her I needed to run a quick errand. I called Mrs. Jenkins from next door, who'd been Olivia's babysitter since she was 3, and asked if she could come over for an hour. She arrived within minutes, having heard the tension in my voice. I walked into Aurelio's 15 minutes later, not because I rushed, but because I chose my timing. The restaurant was only a short drive from our apartment complex. I had taken that route many times before when meeting clients for lunch. The host's eyes widened in recognition. Clearly word had spread through the staff. My mother saw me from their corner table and immediately stood. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, napkins clutched in her fist. My sister crossed her arms, somehow casting herself as the victim. The waiter, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, exhaled in pure relief. They weren't even sitting anymore. They were surrounded. Tables staring, phones recording, guests whispering. This was not the glamorous Mother's Day they'd envisioned. My mother grabbed my wrist the second I got close enough. "Rachel, stop this right now and unfreeze the card. We are humiliated." You humiliated yourselves when you told my daughter she wasn't invited, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. You must forgive, she snapped, voice trembling with rage. Family always forgives. My daughter's voice replayed in my head. Why doesn't Grandma want me there, Mommy? I turned to the manager. You can run the charge through my account, but not theirs, and only for the food already served, not the champagne, not the extra desserts, just the basics. The manager nodded, relief evident in his eyes. I looked back at my mother. You don't get to keep privileges after you throw away people. My mother's chin trembled. My sister inhaled like she was about to launch into a tirade, then saw the look in my eyes and backed down. For the first time in my life, they understood there were consequences, real ones that couldn't be cried or manipulated away. The manager processed the payment. I signed and walked out. My mother followed me into the entrance hallway, clutching her designer purse, voice thin as tissue paper. Rachel, you're not serious about what you said earlier, right? I turned to face her. I haven't even started yet. She stood speechless, as if suddenly confronted by a stranger wearing her daughter's face. The elevator doors slid open behind me. I stepped inside deliberately, never breaking eye contact. She remained frozen in the hallway, and right before the doors closed, she whispered, What are you going to do? I didn't answer because there was nothing left to say, only proof to deliver. On the drive home, my phone buzzed nonstop. Dad calling, brother calling, relatives calling, screenshots, voice notes, all of them suddenly concerned, suddenly desperate to understand my state of mind. Funny how people only discover urgency when their comfort is threatened. When my daughter was crying, they were silent. When their luxury brunch collapsed, they found their voices. Back home, I found Olivia coloring on the living room floor, earbuds in, still wearing the little purple hoodie she'd had on all day. Mrs. Jenkins waved from the kitchen, mouthing that everything had been fine. I thanked her as she left, grateful for neighbors who understood what real support looked like. Olivia looked up, eyes wide, waiting for my expression to tell her whether she should be afraid. I knelt beside her. I didn't let them talk down to us today. Her shoulders dropped in relief, as if she'd been holding her breath too. Then I opened my laptop because people think consequences are just emotional. They don't realize consequences can be structural. Inside my bank dashboard, I navigated to the Authorized Users tab. Victoria Watson, Daniel Watson, Renee Watson. 3 names. 3 people who'd treated me like an endlessly replenishing resource. Remove access. Confirm a window appeared. Processing completed. They wanted to play hierarchy games? Fine. Let's see how they operate without access to the very woman they'd declared not worth including on Mother's Day. The next morning, the real fallout started. At 8:07 a.m., before I finished brushing my teeth, my phone lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. 15 missed calls, 9 voice messages, 6 texts, all marked urgent. Mother, father, sister, blowing up my phone like a malfunctioning fire hydrant. I didn't answer a single one. I poured Olivia's cereal, packed her folder for school, tied her shoelaces. She hummed a song from TikTok as if nothing in the world was wrong. Because for her, nothing was. That was the point. For the first time, the storm wasn't inside our home. It was happening outside, in the world of adults who thought they controlled mine. At 10:14 a.m., my bank manager called. Ms. Watson, your mother and brother are here demanding access to your accounts. We've informed them they've been removed as authorized users. They're not handling it well. I sipped my coffee. Tell them to contact legal, not me. He paused. I already did. At 11:02 a.m., my brother James sent a photo. Him, mother, father, standing in the bank lobby like 3 VIPs who just discovered their badges no longer worked. The message read, Fix this now. 2 years ago, this would have destroyed me. Today it felt like justice finally remembering my address. At 12:45 p.m., while heating pasta for lunch, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Ms. Watson, this is Linda from Family Affairs Counseling. Your mother has scheduled a mediation meeting and listed you as attending. I actually laughed. They didn't ask me. Oh, she sounded surprised. They implied you had agreed already. Of course they did. They never ask. They assign. I will not be attending. I'll make a note, she said. As I rinsed the pasta, I realized something critical. They weren't trying to make peace. They were trying to regain access. Everything had shifted from emotional to tactical. What happened at 3:17 p.m. proved it. My phone vibrated with a FaceTime request from my aunt in Florida. We hadn't spoken in 8 years. The moment I answered, she launched in without preamble. "Sweetheart, your mother is hysterical. Why would you do this to your own family? They said you froze all the cards during Mother's Day. How cruel can you be?" There it was, the smear campaign phase, the make her the villain phase, the last weapon they thought they controlled. I kept my voice calm. "Aunt Deborah, did they tell you they informed my daughter she's not a well-behaved child and uninvited her for Mother's Day?" Silence. "Did they tell you they laughed while she cried?" Heavier silence. "Did they tell you they bragged about their luxury brunch while expecting me to pay the bill they hid from me?" She blinked. "No, they didn't mention that part." "Of course not. They don't include context, only control." I ended the call politely and blocked her number too. At 5:51 p.m., my mother tried a new angle, a video call holding Olivia's old baby blanket like some nostalgic emotional weapon. Her eyes were red, voice cracked from hours of performative distress. "Families fight, but money doesn't need to be involved," she pleaded. "You can reverse all this." Reverse? There was nothing to reverse. This was the first time in my entire adult life I hadn't folded. "Mother," I said slowly, "you're only upset because I stopped funding your cruelty." Her lips parted as if I'd physically struck her. I ended the call mid-sob. I closed the phone, turned to Olivia coloring on the floor, and kissed the top of her head. I was breaking the cycle for her. At 9:28 p.m., my legal advisor texted, "It's time." I'd been consulting with her for months about setting proper boundaries with my family, especially after my divorce from Olivia's father 3 years ago. She had helped me understand that my family's financial dependence was a form of abuse, not just an inconvenience. When I told her what happened today, she confirmed we could now implement the protection plan we'd discussed. At 9:43 p.m., I sat at my kitchen island, laptop open, legal documents on screen, while Olivia slept in her room with the soft pink glow of her nightlight. My attorney's voice on speaker was clinical, precise. "All family-linked accounts, obligations, joint access, and informal authorizations are now formally dissolved. You are legally insulated. No one can demand anything further. Do you wish to file the final notice?" I looked at the blinking cursor. This wasn't revenge. This was the moment I became undeniably free. I clicked send. In less than 1 second, an entire lifetime of emotional debt was closed. At 10:11 p.m., my father called from a number I didn't recognize. I only had his contact in my phone because we shared family health insurance. Something else I would change tomorrow. I answered only because I wanted the final moment to be clean. His voice wasn't angry now. It was thin, uncertain. "Your mother can't stop crying," he whispered. "Your sister feels humiliated. They feel betrayed." I stared at the steam rising from my tea. "I felt that way for 30 years, I replied. "You just never noticed." He said nothing because there was nothing left to manipulate. "I'm not cutting anyone out," I clarified. "I'm cutting myself free." He inhaled sharply, and for perhaps the first time ever, he truly heard me. Then I ended the call. The next morning, I drove Olivia to the botanical garden. We walked among the cherry blossoms. We laughed. We ate ice cream at 9:30 a.m. for absolutely no reason. Her happiness wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was ours, pure, untouched, unbargained. And as she hugged my arm and pointed at a butterfly struggling to escape its cocoon, I felt it in my chest. We had broken the pattern. My family lost their supply, but I gained something they never had or understood. A life built on self-respect rather than fear. I was choosing a future where my daughter would grow up knowing she never had to beg anyone to see her value. The legacy of humiliation ended with me. Quietly, firmly, permanently. 6 months later, I received a formal letter from my mother requesting to see Olivia. I agreed to supervised visits contingent upon her attending therapy. My brother eventually apologized, acknowledging his role in enabling the family dynamics. My sister remains distant, unable to accept the new reality where money doesn't flow freely. As for my relationship with my parents, we're slowly rebuilding on more equal terms, one careful step at a time, with firm boundaries that protect both Olivia and me. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.